In 2022, we celebrate 130 years of HBCU football. On December 27, 1892, Livingstone and Biddle College, now known as Johnson C. Smith University, played in Salisbury, North Carolina, with Biddle winning 5-0. Over time, HBCU football has evolved. HBCU football's popularity continues to rise. Millions attend games each year and millions more watch on television. The HBCU bands provide some of the top entertainment in the country. Over that time, some of the best players to ever play in the National Football League played at HBCUs. Every Monday through Friday on the HBCU Football Daily Podcast, national radio and television host Donal Ware takes a look at what's happening in HBCU football and talks with coaches, players, administrators, and media about the 2022 season. Make sure you join the conversation on social media by using the hashtag HBCU130. Now, here's your host, Donal Ware.
It's the HBCU Football Daily Podcast for today, Monday, July the 25th. I'm Donal Ware. We launched the HBCU Football Daily Podcast on today. We're doing something a little bit different than what we've done in years past. We've got a video component to it as well as the audio component. And up first, on this year's HBCU Football Daily Podcast is the head football coach at South Carolina State, the defending HBCU national champions, and Buddy Pough in his, I don't want to date you, coach, what 22nd season?
I think it's just 20. I think I started here in 2002, and 22 from 2 is 20. Okay. Like I don't know. Listen, at this point right now, I've been around here a long time.
That's the bottom line. You know, appreciate you coming on the show. We've been doing this, 17 years since BOXTOROW came on the air. Yeah. You know, man, I got to see a little bit of, I was at the banquet, your banquet back in April, the latter part of April. Man, you were having a lot of fun. I got to see a little bit of a different side of you. You were having a lot of fun there.
I did. I enjoyed myself, and it was just a lot of fun in particular, Don, just seeing our guys be rewarded for all of the nice things they've done and all the nice things that we got, the rings and the suits and all kinds of stuff that we got for the Celebration Bowl victory. So it was a lot of fun. And I can tell you that, I fought that Celebration Bowl hard, at the beginning, and now I think I see the error of my way. So I'm excited about what we, have out here in front of us, and hopefully we can get back again. So that's the big goal right now. We don't have to worry about, what our goals are. We want to get back to Atlanta in 2022.
It's interesting you mentioned that was going back to 2011 when this Celebration Bowl idea, I think at that time, I forget what they were trying to call it, was big. But you weren't wrong. I mean, you had a really good team. Bethune-Cookman was really good. There were some teams that really could compete on the national level in the MEAC.
Oh, you're exactly right. We had teams deep down in our conference also that were, worthy of going and playing pretty much against anybody. So we lost to Appalachian a time or two up close, in games at the, at their place in the playoffs. And I just felt like we were that close to being able to get over the hump and win in that regard. But at the same time, eventually common sense took over. The fact that we weren't making any money, regardless how big a crowd you had there. And it's so hard, Donald. It's so hard to gather a fan base at this level and simply take off at a moment's notice to go play someplace, in the playoffs, the way you have to do. When they set those brackets up in basketball, you go off and you play, in wherever the sites are. When we go off and play at an Appalachian or at a Georgia Southern or some of those places, and if you actually should happen to win, then you got to figure out where you're going again the following week. That's just not us. So, I like the idea of being able to prepare, for a couple of weeks or a month or whatever, for where you're going, and then to make that one big culminating kind of affair at that point, then you're going about the task of, of setting your sights on where you're going and that kind of stuff. And I tell you, our fan base had a ball, in Atlanta. And, I can tell you, I think also that we'll continue to go. I think I saw A&T folk there. I think I saw Central folk and Alcorn. They weren't there, but because they had been and had good, experiences in the previous years, they continue to want to come back. So, I think we got something there. And, I'm hoping that we can continue to build it, in a way where, it's something great for years and years to come.
You mentioned the fan base, and I can think back to 2009. I came down. You played Florida A&M, hosted Florida A&M. I think they had Curtis Pulley, and I think you were underdogs in that game. What a game! You wiped them off the field. But the thing about it, to me, what struck me was the ambiance. To me, it was one of the better college football experiences that I had. You had the mascot there. The stadium was packed. That hasn't been the case, however, the last couple of years. Do you think that win in the Celebration Bowl will help to rejuvenate your fan base in terms of coming to Bulldog Stadium?
I sure do hope so, Don. We've been a little bit under the weather from the pandemic of sorts. We just hadn't had the size, numbers, crowds, and people in general they're just still being careful about getting out and mixing it up the way that some other fan bases tend to seem to be able to do. So I'm hoping that this game kind of starts the, renewal of sorts of the good crowds that we had back when we were really drawing well back in the, mid 2015, 2012, back in that neighborhood. But I'm going to tell you, we don't quite still know exactly what we'll be here now in another year or two. I keep hearing about other strains and other, possible outbreaks of this virus deal. So you still got to kind of be cautious in a certain way. So, I don't know yet, but let's hope that we get most of it by us and we'll be able to kind of cut loose and really get back to normal.
Take us through sort of, what the off season, what spring ball was sort of like, whether you lost any of your key. Seemed like everybody should have been coming back, but you never know these days. But just take us through spring ball and do the majority of, particularly your star players, come back.
Right. We had most of our guys back on this football team in general. And on our offensive side of the ball, we bring back Corey and Big Shaq, the big wide receiver who had the nice game. Kendall Flowers, our running back. And we bring back our entire offensive line. So we should be in pretty good shape there. And then on defense, those two defensive ends, Godbold and Jablonski Green are back. B.J. Davis is back. Our secondary is a little bit depleted, but Jalen Evans and Jalen Bart, some of those guys are back in the secondary. So we mostly, bring this team back for 2022. And, and our kicking game is in pretty good shape. So, that part's all good. The best part of our spring was the turnout we had for our spring game. We had probably the largest crowd. Now, we don't charge for the spring game. So, we don't necessarily make, any real dust out of the game. But we had the largest turnout for our spring game of any spring game we've had in a long, long time. It was a really festive affair. We had, food trucks and bounce houses and all kinds of stuff around that, around our tailgating area. So our fans did come out in large numbers and had, a wonderful weekend that way. But, it's now back to the point where, we're going to see what happens in this coming fall, because we got to see if we can continue to build on what we had this past Celebration Bowl season on through the spring now, into the actual fall season. So it'll be interesting to see exactly where we are in the whole scheme of things, because I think we might be ready to really bust out and go again. But at the same time, we do need a break from any of the other strains of numbers, the BC strand of this deal, in a way where we don't necessarily have, that come out and knock us backwards again.
It's interesting. I look at where the program is now, and even if you go back to we had 21, even the 19 season, it was a shared championship in the MEAC. But now you were set to retire, I think either that year, the year before that.
Yeah.
So what changed in terms of of you coming back? And I know you're having the time of your life right now.
You know what, Don? I don't know. We talked about it, and it was a circumstance where it didn't have the right kind of feel for going home and just sitting on my fanny, for the rest of my life that way. We had, I guess, maybe a little bit of a uncertainty dealing with the virus and not necessarily wanting to do a coaching search and having a changeover during, those uncertain times. So, they felt like they were on pretty stable grounds. If I could keep working, they just felt like maybe let's see if we could go another year or two until we got through this thing. We got into it, and it started to really turn to the good for the kinds of year that we had. So we just kind of said at that point, let's see if we can keep it going. So I don't necessarily have a reason to go home. I'm hoping to kind of coach for at least another year. But if it comes to a point where I start to feel like, that I'm holding us back in any way, I'll get out of it in a heartbeat.
Was that something you felt going back those 3 or 4 years ago that did you feel like?
Not really.
Okay.
It was just that when you start getting to the point where you were, age-wise, you start saying, you know what, I might ought to be thinking about letting somebody else have it. But it was a situation where the university didn't feel quite comfortable at that point having a change. This is a big football at South Carolina State is such an important item until they didn't necessarily want to take an opportunity, to make a change, at a time when there were so many other uncertain kinds of aspects of the program, of the university as a whole going on. So, the one really good thing that was going on at this point, was something that they just felt like they wanted to kind of keep in place for a while.
Buddy Pough, of course, the head football coach of South Carolina State, joins us here on the HBCU Football Daily Podcast. Coach Pough, I don't know if you can rank teams, right? All the teams you've coached now, the 20 or so teams, 20 plus years you've coached. Where is the 2021 team? Because, as you know, and everybody knows, going into that game against Jackson State, you had absolutely no shot. The MEAC was getting ready to fold and all of those things. And I mean, you guys came out and really did well, but you had a solid season. So where do you rank that team amongst your teams?
I rank it as one of our best. Record-wise, it was not nearly, what some of the other teams have been over the years. We went in there 6-5. Heck, we had to fight our butts off just to go ahead and have a winning record at the very end because we go into Norfolk 5-5. If we lose that game, we'd already clinched the berth into the Celebration Bowl, but at the same time, we had a chance to go in there 5-6. And that was just something that we really desperately did not want to do. We wanted to give, a sense of being, a belonging. You didn't want to go in there with Jackson with all the momentum they had, with a 5-6 team. So we fought our butts off, and I can tell you that was one of the better game plan. I was really proud of our offense in that game because they carried us in that game, and that's not so usual, in a South Carolina State football kind of situation. It's generally the defense that's carrying us. Our offense did a great job of maintaining the football and driving the football and scoring in the second half. It was one of those flip-flop games. We were behind, we were ahead. We were behind, we were ahead. It was kind of that kind of game. So, it was an exciting game that way, and it was a, game for all the marbles in our league. So I can tell you that I was feeling about as good about this football team. I was just proud of this group of young men and they had gone through what we had gone through. We started the year off, we went down and played Alabama A&M in Normal, Alabama. It was one of those kind of games where, we could have easily won the game and we managed to not win the football game. We lost by a point or two. And we go to play Clemson, and then we go to play New Mexico State. We had a tough start of the season that way, and then we 1-3. I think we finally win a game or two, and then we go to FAMU, and they just beat the starch out of us down there. So, we 1-4 at that point. On our way back home, trying to, figure out if we got a chance to have any success at all. And these guys take off and really play well. We win at Delaware. We win at Central. It's tough football games everywhere. We win against the toughest 3 teams in our league on the road. We beat Howard and Morgan at home, but we had to beat Central, Delaware, and Norfolk on the road, who were the next 2, 3, and 4 teams in our league that year. So I can tell you that I was as proud of that team that way for as many different reasons, but the main reason was because they fought through as much adversity as any team, and then they played about as well as anybody did in that game in preparation for the Celebration Bowl. They did about as good as anybody could do in that game.
Do you have, concerns in terms of where the MEAC is, right now in the future of the MEAC?
I do. I don't know exactly where we're headed, but now, Donald, there are so many leagues out there now that's kind of in turmoil. The ASUN and the Big South, those leagues now, have started to kind of work together to try to, be able to have schedules. The Southern Conference seems to be about as strong as anybody over this way, but they seem to not necessarily need to add anybody else. So, they don't seem to be able to help in a way where, that can be of any real advantage to us. The one good thing about, where we stand, those of us that are here in the MEAC still, is that we don't necessarily have a hard time finding teams that want to play us. So we might not necessarily have enough teams in our conference, but we've got enough teams right in our back doors that are really close by us that we can find games in a pretty regular manner that way. So we don't necessarily have to worry about a schedule, and we got good rivalries that still, are available to us here, right close by. So, we still got A&T, even though we don't necessarily feel that we're in the same league anymore. We close up to FAMU and Bethune. Those guys are in great shape. And then the whole entire Southern Conference plays us. So we can play the Citadel. We can play Wofford. We can play Furman. We got all those guys. We got the big South schools, Charleston Southern, Gardner Webb, all up right next. So I can take a trip to all of those places in one day. So the fact that there are enough schools here available to play us, it makes it really a lot easier for us to have, some flexibility to play all the different schools, here close by. I think it's really exciting for our fans to bring, a Gardner Webb in here maybe once every so often, to bring Furman in here once so often, some of that kind of stuff. So I think it works for us in a way that we can also play, some of the guarantee games that we can, kind of fit into our schedule. Anyway, in our schedule. Once upon a time, we had so many conference games until the back part of your schedule was always blocked off. But now we've got some space back in there that we can fit a big-time team that might want to play us, that week before that rivalry game, and then we can make a big check that way sometimes. So it's a lot of different opportunities that become available to you when you got the flexibility of scheduling the way you do. If we can just kind of keep our league together enough where we are viable enough that we can go in and play well in the Celebration Bowl, we can play well in the challenge game this coming fall. I'm rooting for Howard against Alabama State. This coming. Was that September, the 1st of September, somewhere in there?
Yep.
This coming September. That kind of stuff is the kind of stuff that makes us still, viable in a way that people still respect us and know that we still play pretty good ball in this league.
No doubt. Then you look at the competitiveness of the league. Yourself, Norfolk State, Delaware State,
exactly.
Central were right there.
Exactly.
Howard's going to be better than Morgan State's got Damon Wilson. Looks like it's going to be a good league, good competition this year.
I'm excited as I can be about all the coaches. I'm the old doggone guy, the old fart in the league right now. Everybody else is hiring, these great young, dynamic football coaches. I think Trey, at Central, is doing a fantastic job. He ended up having a winning season last year. Dawson up at Norfolk, Merrill, at Delaware State is doing a fantastic job, and what's the guy's name? and Damon Wilson at Norfolk. I mean, at Morgan is going to be, I think, a big thorn in all our sides, here, in the coming years. So, it will be a fun time, to see what these schools, can do against each other. And then last but not least, at Howard, those guys are doing a fantastic job there. And all those guys, on that staff are, Power 5 guys, from way back. So you better bet you got your work cut out for you.
Two last thoughts. You mentioned some guys that were coming back. Who are some of the guys, maybe newcomers, whether they're transfers, whether they're, recruited guys that you think are going to help you this year?
You know what? We got the Ellison kid. He's a wide receiver, big old tall kind of guy. We think might be, a decent player. Tyler Smith, the running back from Gaffney. Dutch Falk is the big name in this state. And, they go over and play, all the national kind of games where Gaffney beat them this past year in the state championship game. And Gaffney's best player, Tyler Smith, is a running back that really played well for them, that we think that we've gotten out of there that we think could be, pretty good. And then, I'm hoping that our defensive front, will come along and play really well. Our inside guys, should be, I'm just sitting here thinking about, which one of those guys. But, I talked about Garbolt and Jablonski, but Octavius Minton and Brandon Tucker, both those guys, are fantastic young defensive front guys. So I don't know, I think we got enough bodies around to be about as decent depth-wise as we've been a long time. So hopefully we can keep all of them healthy through the spring, keep them all healthy through the preseason practice into fall camp, and at that point, on into the season that way.
You know what? You don't run from anybody. I look at your schedule. First 5 games, first 4 are on the road. Then, you finish off the 5-game stretch with what's going to be a very good Florida A&M team. You got University of South Carolina, A&T, Central Florida in that mix. Talk about those first 5 games. That's a pretty tough stretch.
You're exactly right. We go to Florida 2 weeks in a row. We play UCF on a Thursday night before the first Saturday of the season. UCF beat up on Florida in Tampa in the Gasparilla Bowl this past year, and they run around about as well as any football team I've seen in a long, long time. We come back to the house and practice for a few days and go back to Florida and play Bethune-Cookman. And those SWAC teams now, you can imagine, how excited they are and how juiced they are about when South Carolina State shows up, on their doorstep. So, we'll go to doggone Daytona Beach looking to try to see if we can come out with our hide. And then we got an open date, which is a good thing because that kind of gives us a chance to regroup a little bit. Then we come up y'all's way and we play A&T in Greensboro, week 4 of the season. The next week after that, then we play Carolina in the SEC. It'll be 80,000 Holland sold, in that place. So, we got our chance to, go in there and see if we can hang with, with those kind of guys. Between A&T and South Carolina, it's almost the same group of guys. And I'm starting to call A&T South Carolina North because it has so many guys to transfer here in the last so many odd years, from Columbia up to Greensboro. And then last but not least, then we finish our non-conference schedule with FAMU here. And everybody knows, what kind of team Willie's got, returning that daggone big old wide receiver, that McKinnon kid he got down there is a beast down there. He'll hopefully, we can doggone figure a way to get them slowed down a little bit. We go homecoming, Virginia Lynchburg. I think everybody gets a little bit of Virginia Lynchburg at some point. And then we get into our conference. We start with Central here in Orangeburg, and at that point, then we go for the rest of our conference schedule. Let's hope that we can be alive and kicking by the time we get to December, because it's a long, long way to go before we get there.
Yeah. South Carolina. The years I've been doing this, South Carolina hasn't been on your schedule much. Am I wrong about that?
You know what? We hadn't had them on for about, I guess, maybe 6-7 years.
Okay.
We played them 3 or 4 times in the past also, though. And, it just hadn't worked out. We had them on our schedule, I think, back in our schedule 2-3 years ago. And because of some of the changes that they had in the SEC, we ended up having to move that game for another game for some sort. I forgot exactly why. But you know what? We're getting our chance to go back in there now. And, we'll see if we can get in there and hang, with those guys. They really did play well in the Duke's Mayonnaise Bowl game in Charlotte last year against North Carolina. And, that team was really one of the better football teams, that surprised everybody toward the end of the year last year.
In his 21st season as the head coach of South Carolina State is Buddy Pough joining us here on the HBCU Football Daily Podcast. As mentioned, the Bulldogs going to open the season Thursday, September 1st at Central Florida. Coach Pough, appreciate the time, man. We look forward to talking with you during the course of the season.
I appreciate you, Donald. I look forward to seeing you guys when we come up to Greensboro this coming September.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of the HBCU Football Daily Podcast. You can also listen to the podcast at BOXTOROW.com, iHeartMedia, or wherever you get your podcasts. Don't forget to get your HBCU football fix on BOXTOROW with Donal Ware each weekend on the radio station near you, and on SiriusXM on HBCU, Channel 142, and on ESPNU Radio on SiriusXM, Channel 84. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram at BOXTOROW for the latest in HBCU football, and don't forget to tell a friend.